get this out of the way. So, the dude abides. I do not assume that everybody here has seen or knows what The Big Lebowski is, but just a quick show of hands for those who do know The Big Lebowski. Okay, so we've got a pretty good coverage. For the rest of you, I don't want to leave you in the dark. The Big Lebowski is a movie produced by the Coen brothers, so it's a kind of weird comedy, and stars Jeff Bridges as the Big Lebowski. And the Big Lebowski refers to himself as the dude. In fact, everyone who knows him refers to him as the dude. So he doesn't go by Lebowski, he goes by the dude. That becomes important a little bit later on. I see the Big Lebowski as sort of a happy American Taoist. And so I was explaining this to one of my colleagues in town this week about my vision of this sermon, and he suggested to me that it would be most appropriate, most in keeping with the dude, to not write it. And so I haven't. I got some notes, but they're notes. So I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to say. But, it then occurred to me that if I was going to make this sermon be in keeping with the Big Lebowski, that, or I should say the dude, that these are the wrong robes. Big Lebowski did not wear these robes. He wore these robes. Most everywhere he went. And at long last, I'm going to take my shoes off and put on a pair of sandals. Now, the Big Lebowski goes through a number of misadventures revolving around a case of mistaken identity. There's another Lebowski who's loaded, rich, and so some people come to collect money from the dude, thinking that he's that Lebowski, and he's not. And so he goes, and there's some urinating on rugs, which he loves, and so he tries to recoup that from the. It's a confusing story. You have to see it. But he's talking to the other Lebowski, and just to let you know a little bit about the dude, the rich Lebowski says to the dude, Mr. Lebowski. And the dude says, let me explain something to you. I'm not Mr. Lebowski. You're Mr. Lebowski. I'm the dude. So that's what you call me. That or his dudeness or duder or El Duderino if you're not into the whole brevity thing. So this is a flavor of the dude. And the thing that drew me to preaching about this is two things. One, there is a phrase that has emerged out of the movie. It's only mentioned once in the movie, and that is, the dude abides. The other phrase that inspired me to write this sermon is the dude is explaining to a character in the movie named Maud about what he's trying to do. And he said, it's a very complicated case, Maud. A lot of ins, a lot of outs, a lot of what have yous. And maybe it's because I'm sick, but that occurred to me to sound a lot like life. And I'm coupling that with the dude abides. And out of this germinates this sermon, which I have not written. So the dude abides. He goes through all kinds of terrible, terrible situations. And at the end, he doesn't exactly emerge victorious or anything. He kind of emerges at the same point that he started off. But he abides through that whole thing. Something carries him through. And it is this attitude where he is able to abide. Now, he is aided in this attitude by copious marijuana use and drinking White Russians. And, so I knew where to draw the line this morning. There's a whole day ahead of us. But, I was thinking about this idea of abiding. And it's a powerful idea. And I think it's actually a universalist idea. Because it has to do, I think, with salvation. I mean, ultimately, finally, it is about an ultimate faith that all will be well. You could not abide without that faith. And when you have this sense that all will be well, that it will turn out, then you are able to abide in the midst of tribulation. When you are a newly motherless child, when the chips are down, so this is obviously something that we could employ in our personal lives. It's also something that we will need to employ in justice work. And abiding, by the way, does not mean that you are inert. He was not inert. He did take action. It usually wasn't the wisest action, but that also probably sounds familiar. But he was able to abide. So, I say salvation. This is about universal salvation. But what does that mean? I mean, what does salvation mean to us today? Because it started off, right, as salvation meant you would go to heaven. And for some of us, that still makes a lot of sense. But for many of us, that doesn't make sense anymore. And over time, in fact, the entire Universalist wing of the Unitarian Universalist family and tradition has moved from universalism being about universal salvation in the afterlife to universal salvation in this life. So creating systems of justice and fairness, right? So this is not going to happen in our lifetime. So now we have said that universal salvation means that we are saved in this lifetime because of the work that we do to save society. But this is not going to happen in our lifetime. We still must work for it. But it's not something, I don't think, that provides us with something that we can abide in. So another way to look at salvation, perhaps, is that it has something to do, it shows up, the Universalist message shows up in our current configuration in our first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. That is a Universalist message. But that puts salvation, that just takes salvation, takes it from the afterlife and puts it at the beginning of life. Gives us a starting point. You start off inherently worthy and dignified. You don't lose that. But when you're in pain, when you're getting beat up, saying to yourself, I'm worthy, might not cut it. It's a piece. But I don't know how many nights it's going to help you get through. So we need to think about this idea of salvation. And each of these things that I've mentioned have elements of truth and use in them. So I've come up with sort of a working, it's not a definition, right? It's something that I'm working on. But salvation has something to do with the idea that you are an essential part of something that is far greater than you, and the faith that love wins. So, it may not happen in our lifetime, but you are a part of something that is greater than you. And love wins. And if it is destined to be achieved, then it is already achieved. We may put our fear aside. You know, fear and not hate is the opposite of love. Love and hate are both aggressive. They're both moving toward. Hate is aggression motivated by fear. Love is aggression motivated by compassion and promise. Now, for some reason, all of that reminded me of my very first girlfriend. And she is now a life coach. And she does all this vision board stuff, which really irritates me. I mean, she's dealing with salvation, right? But she's dealing with it in a really, I find, superficial way. Now, she might help people. She probably does. But I find that not quite satisfying. I couldn't walk that path. It seems shallow to me. Another take, right, to how to get this sense of how I abide, get the sense of salvation. How do we get that sense? It's to be just at peace with where you are right now. There's something to that. There's something to being at peace in the moment. But again, when you are getting beat up, the moment is pretty bad. It's very difficult. You have to have a deep faith, and where is that faith rooted? So I think we have to press on be at peace right now. We have to press on that and find where it is rooted that cannot be shaken. And I don't know that that can be rooted in the moment where you are. So I think that the dude has discovered a middle way. And that is to abide. To know that your ultimate state is assured. Know that your ultimate state is assured. You're essential to something that is bigger than you, and love wins. And assured it is already achieved. So, how do we do this practically in our life, our daily life? The dude had practices. He practiced drinking White Russians and bowling. I am afraid that I can recommend these as metaphorical practices only. But they have some wisdom in them, right? They were doable. Doable. They were doable. I read I'm reading a book, The Happiness, help me, Tom. Happiness Hypothesis. And he's talking about meditation, and he's got this great intro to his little chapter on it. And he said, what if I told you that I could give you a pill that would increase your well-being, increase your satisfaction, have physical health benefits, no negative side effects, and was free? And that's meditation. I said, great, I'm going to do it. And so I start to meditate, and I last for a day or two. And then I'm like, where's my pill? I want the pill. The pill is easy. So then I started thinking, okay, let's listen to the dude. Let's make this doable. And I shortened it. I put some parameters around it that would contain it and make it not so intimidating to me. And I came up with a solution that started to work for me. And then because it started to work for me, I thought, hey, I'll share it with you guys and see what you think. So my solution became a proposal. And my proposal got a name. I'm calling it 40 for 40. And here is the proposal. I invite you to join me in committing to 40 days, wherein once a day you sit down and take 40 breaths. The counting of the breath will help keep you mindful of where you are, so it's a mindfulness meditation. It takes about 10 to 20 minutes, depending on how deeply you're breathing, and I would imagine that at the beginning it will take you less time, and at the end it will take you more time, and you will be happier for that. So, the other element to this is that I have cut up little strings.
I have cut up little strings.
That is true. That is true. Katie cut up little strings. And Minnie and Cora helped bag them. And Fran has them. So in there are little sandwich bags. Not enough for everybody, but we'll make more if we need to. And there are 14 strings in each of those, so that when you run out, you'll have to come back for more. And that's how I know that you're keeping on going. But I find that if I put a string around my arm every time that I do the 40 breaths, it is motivating. It keeps me involved with the discipline. And then I get this cool little, 40 strings around my wrist, which is a sort of badge of honor and a reward to myself, and continues to motivate me. So eventually, should you take us up on this proposal, you will have 40 strings around your wrist. You will have, because of that, meditated for, not in a row necessarily, but 40 days. You take a couple days off. 40 breaths. So we will try this right now, just to give you a sample. And I'm going to be a little presumptuous and teach you how to breathe. If I can manage to do that. So, this is not something that you have to get right away. You could work toward it while you're counting your breath. This is Ujjayi breathing. It comes to us from yoga. It's yogic breathing. And you could think of it as breathing in such a way that it sort of makes a audible sound in the back of your throat that sounds like the ocean. So it can be soothing in and of itself. And I'll see if I can do it without snorting. But let's get comfortable. Find yourself in a meditative posture. We'll just do 20. Now, in the midst of it, the choir is going to sing the breathing meditation, okay? So don't be surprised when they come in. And if you lose count at that point, fine. And if you want to sing with them, great. But we're going to get started. If you want to go through full 20, that's great. And the choir will close us out. So start the breathing, and let me see if I don't know if I could do this wrong. So after service outside, friend will have the bag. When you take a bag, please sign up. If you arrive there and there are no more bags left, write your name and email and that you need a bag, and we'll get you one soon. So The Big Lebowski is kind of narrated by this cowboy, which makes no sense at all, but there he is. And at the end of the movie, he sits down next to the dude at the bar at the bowling alley. They have a brief conversation, and then they part ways. The cowboy says, "Take her easy, dude. I know you will." And that's when the dude says, "Yeah, well, the dude abides." And then the cowboy closes the movie with this: "The dude abides. I don't know about you, but I take comfort in that. It's good knowing he's out there, the dude, taking her easy for all of us sinners." You are an essential part of a movement that is far greater than you. The direction of that movement is inevitable, and its destiny is the victory of love.